Coming up on Jerusalem Dateline, Yom HaShoa, honoring victims of the Holocaust at Yad Vashem, and Prime Minister Netanyahu expressing renewed resolve to vanquish Israel's enemies. Plus, the grandson of a Nazi soldier finds redemption through helping Holocaust survivors. A new report on anti-Semitism from Tel Aviv University, and a CBN film illustrates the genius of Israel. All this and more coming up on this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Hello and welcome to this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Julie Stahl. Israel marked Holocaust Remembrance Day this week, and at a stirring ceremony at Yad Vashem, Prime Minister Netanyahu struck a defiant note about the nation's strength. Our bureau chief, Chris Mitchell, brings us more on that and other stories.
Israel's Holocaust Remembrance Day began here at Yad Vashem, Israel's Holocaust Memorial, where 6 torches were lit to remember the 6 million Jews who perished in the Holocaust. 6 Holocaust survivors lit the torches, each with a story of how they survived. This year's Remembrance Day took place 80 years after the end of World War II, and in the shadow of October 7th, the worst atrocity against the Jewish people since the Holocaust. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu declared Israel survived that day and will defeat its enemies.
Those who feared that after the October 7 massacre we would face another Holocaust saw how we turned the tables. On this Holocaust Day, I promise, the military pressure on Hamas will continue. We will destroy all its capabilities. We will return all our hostages. We will defeat Hamas. And we will prevent Iran from obtaining nuclear weapons. To fight vigorously against the fanatical regimes that threaten the entire world, and to do so in a timely manner, this is the main lesson of the Holocaust.
Netanyahu also warned of the threat from a nuclear Iran.
The extremist regime in Iran is a threat to the fate and existence, not only to our future, but to the fate and future of all human society. This is what will happen if it obtains nuclear weapons.
Israel has suggested it will attack Iran's nuclear facilities unless Iran voluntarily destroys them. However, U.S. negotiators seeking a deal to stop Iran's pursuit of a nuclear weapon are willing to let them have a civil nuclear program.
If Iran wants a civil nuclear program, they can have one just like many other countries in the world have one, and that is they import enriched material.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio says Iran will have to stop enriching uranium, the main material in a nuclear bomb.
But there's a pathway to a civil, peaceful nuclear program if they want one. But if they insist on enriching, then they will be the only country in the world that doesn't have a weapons program, quote unquote, but is enriching. And so I think that's problematic.
In light of the Holocaust and the shadow of October 7th, it remains to be seen if Israel will feel the need to destroy what they consider another existential threat to their survival. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Something unique happens every Holocaust Remembrance Day across all of Israel. It's a tangible national honoring of the victims who lost their families and lives during that terrible time. Chris Mitchell went to the middle of Jerusalem to capture that moment.
We're here in one of the major intersections here in Jerusalem. This is King David Street, Karen Hayesod, Jabotinsky. But what's going to happen in a few moments, it's going to be replicated all over Israel. There's going to be a 2-minute siren in honor of Holocaust Remembrance Day. This began just in the very mid-1950s, and it's continued to this day. What this siren does is commemorate the 6 million Jews who died in the Holocaust. And here we are 80 years after the Holocaust, and we're also commemorating in the shadow of October 7th, when 1,200 Israelis were murdered, and that is the worst atrocity since the Holocaust. So you can imagine how many people have been affected by the Holocaust. The children, the grandchildren, the great-grandchildren, all living in the shadow of the most horrific genocide in all of human history. And so this is just a wonderful way. You're going to see people standing, you're going to see cars stopping, you're going to see people getting out of their cars and standing beside their cars, all in a way to commemorate, to memorialize and remember the 6 million who perished in the Holocaust. So this is such a powerful reminder of what happened 80 years ago. The Shoah, as it said in Hebrew, the Holocaust, where 6 million Jews died during that time. And so for 2 minutes, the whole country stops and makes a pledge that came out of the Holocaust, never again.
I think about my grandfather. He was a Holocaust survivor from Stanislav, Poland, and he was hidden in a barn by righteous Gentiles.
My grandparents, to my regret, were killed, and I don't think we should ever forget what happened.
Holocaust Remembrance Day is a day that really touches me because part of my family was killed in the Holocaust. This is a terrible and difficult day for all the people of Israel.
The people of Israel live, and the people of Israel will get up and continue with the help of God, with the expectation of the redemption.
With so much focus this week on the terrible losses from the Holocaust, the question arises, can there be any redemption for the generations who came after? Do the choices of your ancestors have to define you? The man in our next interview decided that for him, they don't. He's the grandson of a Nazi soldier and explained to me what motivates him to help Israeli immigrants and Holocaust survivors. Here's his remarkable story.
Alexander Dietze, welcome to Jerusalem Dateline.
Thank you.
You are born in Germany.
Yes.
You grew up knowing a little bit about history of your country, learning in school, and then you became a Christian in your early 20s, and then you had a big surprise. Tell us what it was.
A very big surprise. My grandfather, he had a special gift for me. And, my grandfather, he taught me bicycle. He taught me swimming, so I was very close to him. But he wanted to give me his Nazi medals as a heritage. And suddenly, my whole perspective of my grandfather, Granddad, what's that? I mean, seeing all the symbols that I was always finding in my past, like they were suddenly in his hands. He never spoke. In Germany in general, the people don't speak about the Holocaust. And this was a big shout in my heart and in my soul that I heard. And from there, my journey began.
So how did that affect your looking, the way you looked at the Jewish people, the Holocaust?
Yeah, of course, when you come to faith, suddenly I saw, what is this Israel and Israel and Jerusalem? And it was interesting, but when this happened, it came to the past, the 70 years, not the 2000 years. Mm-hmm. So 70 years. So suddenly I found myself with a responsibility of kind of looking in. But the key moment was when I had a friend from Israel who came to the Christians to talk about God's heart for Israel. And he said something profound. He said, what the devil meant for evil, God can turn out for good. Can turn out.
Now, and your wife also had played a part in this too, didn't she?
She found out that there are in Israel in this time 250,000 Holocaust survivors that are still living in Israel, and they're very poor because they're coming from the ex-Soviet Union. When they come, they lose everything. They are maybe academics and teachers, and they start with cleaning toilets. It was a big wow. So we found an organization to invest everything to help the elderlies, the Holocaust survivors that were children in the Holocaust, now immigrated to Israel, and to support them in different ways.
And how did they respond to you?
I have the grandson,
Mantle?
It's easier for them to relate with me as with the old elderly generations of German. It's really the little gap of grandson, because they can differentiate. They always say, it was not you. And I have to say, yes, but we have a responsibility, and we do it out of free will. So we never had rejection. In the opposite, I say always, I have in Israel maybe now 50 grandmas and 50 Jewish granddads.
Wow. And one of them gave you a special present one time.
Yes. After the event with my grandfather and after a long journey that brought us to Israel, it was at an event, a very dear Holocaust survivor. She is the leader of an organization who takes care of thousands of Holocaust survivors. She said, I brought a very special gift for you, Alex. And she opened up a little box, and inside it was a medal over 75 years victory over Nazi Germany. Wow. And from there, I connected the circle to my grandfather. I rejected his heritage of my physical grandfather, but I accepted with honor the heritage of my Jewish grandma. And this was a circle that was closed in a way. I saw the purpose of our being here, supporting Israel, supporting the elderly and the Holocaust survivors, in the responsibility we have as Germans, as believers. And this is what we're running for.
That's a very inspiring story. Thank you so much, Alexander Dietze, for joining us on Jerusalem Dateline.
Thank you for having me.
Coming up, how Jewish culture has survived through the millennia, and a look at some of the secrets of the genius of Israel. One of the marvels of human history is how the Jewish people have survived for thousands of years, despite attempts by so many cultures to destroy them. CBN Films released a documentary recently that examines this miracle of resilience. It's called The Genius of Israel, and director Aaron Zimmerman told our Chris Mitchell more about it.
Aaron Zimmerman, great to be with you. You've got a film called The Genius of Israel. Tell us about it.
Well, it's based on a book called The Genius of Israel by the great Dan Sinor and Saul Singer. They wrote a book last year, before the war in Israel, by the way, and they had this question: why are Israelis so happy? Because last year, every year the UN puts out this World Happiness Report, and usually it's all the Scandinavian countries are at the top. But last year they got a surprise. Number 4 was Israel, surrounded by terrorists, surrounded by enemy nations. Okay, what's the deal with this? Why are they so happy? And so this book and this film examines exactly why that is.
What are some of the secrets to the genius of Israel?
Okay, well, one of them is the community, and one of them, it's sort of all the things that we're throwing away in Western society. We're saying now, oh, we don't need the family, we don't need a mother, father, children, we don't need all of this community, we're good on our own. America, you're individualistic, you do things on your own. And that's the exact opposite, because Israel has the lowest drug overdose, lowest suicide, lowest alcohol consumption. They're the youngest country, having the most children of all the wealthy nations in the world. And so that community is what is giving them the hope and the happiness. And when we say happiness, let me say, it's not just sort of like rah, rah, cheerful happiness. The questions are based on deep life satisfaction. And so Israelis, they say, every Friday you have Shabbat, even whether you're religious or not. And you don't just go see your parents, maybe. You go see grandparents, you see aunts and uncles and cousins. And there's this deep family tie, so that you're not alone. You're always in a community. So you have that. Your schools are very community-based. They have strong scout movements for children here that are very community-based. You go into the army and you're part of that. So you're always part of your family. You're part of your country. You're part of the rest of your society. No one's left out in the cold, and that's a very different picture from what we have in Western countries.
How does God fit into this, in their faith?
It's really interesting. I asked them that, and there wasn't so much a difference. Of course, God is in the center of it all, I believe. And I think God has kept the Jewish people through many generations. They say in the Passover, every generation, Haman rises up to kill us, depending on, whoever that is this time. This year it's Hamas. God is at the center of that. He's the one keeping them. Yes, are they independent and defending themselves, and do they have resilience? Absolutely. They wouldn't do it without God bringing back the Jewish people through 2,000 years of horror and Holocaust and war and you name it. So he's at the center of it, whether people want to say that or not, but I found the tradition level is about the same with religious and non-religious. The non-religious will still go home every week because if they don't, their parents will yell at them. You know, you better be here for Shabbat.
What do you want people to get out of this film?
There is so much anti-Semitism all over today, and I hate to see it. I hate to see the media. I hate to see the UN. Everybody's pounding Israel and saying, look, they're an apartheid state. They're causing a genocide in Gaza. It's simply not true. I want people to see what an amazing country Israel is. And whether you disagree with their government or not, whether you disagree with this war or not, you need to see the human side. You need to see these people are full of love and compassion and community. You know what really struck me here was when the hostages were taken. People here felt that as deeply as if they had been their own children. The majority of the state of Israel doesn't know these hostages, and yet they feel it so deeply. They cry. I've seen them crying, looking at the memorials, saying we have to get these home, marching for them. Now that for me is foreign. I don't see that level of care in the West for somebody you don't even know, but there's an extremely unified population here, and everything is about charity and love and doing unto others as you would have them do unto you. You know, it's the golden rule. Yeah. We can take a lot from that.
Yeah. Well, I've seen that too. If anything you learn about Israel after being here is that they're a family. So that's how they identify with those hostages. And it's a great story that needs to be told. Erin, thanks so much for the film. We look forward to seeing it soon.
Thanks, Chris.
Still ahead, a new report from Tel Aviv University reveals where anti-Semitism trends are on the rise. Ahead of Holocaust Remembrance Day, Tel Aviv University released a new report on anti-Semitism as it's showing up worldwide. One of the researchers, Dr. Carl Jonker, explained more about the trends after October 7th in Australia, the US, and around the world. Dr. Carl Jonker, welcome to Jerusalem Dateline. Now, Tel Aviv University has just come out with a new report on the status of anti-Semitism. Can you tell us what some of the highlights are of that report, maybe some of the shocking things?
Yeah, the main findings in the report was that the anti-Semitic wave, the global anti-Semitic wave, and incidents occurred right after October 7th occurred, between October 2023 and December 2023, and then slowly declined throughout 2024. That said, levels of anti-Semitism remained higher in 2024 than before October 7th.
Can you tell us where anti-Semitism is on the rise?
The two countries that presented the most alarming findings in the report were Australia and Italy. Australia recorded a threefold increase in the number of incidents from 2022 to 2024. This was particularly shocking given Australia's reputation as a welcoming country of moderation. So that really stood out to us. And then also in Italy, we saw a rise in the number of incidents, particularly associated with the war in Gaza.
And what about the United States? How are they faring?
In the United States and also in Canada, we saw moderate increases in the levels of anti-Semitism, not big spikes as far as the total number of incidents between 2023 and 2024. But as I said, Canada, the United States, and other countries, the levels that we saw in 2024 remain higher than before 2023.
And how are security forces, police, how are they dealing with this? Are they dealing with this appropriately?
Well, law enforcement has a lot of challenges. They face a lot of challenges when dealing with hate crimes in general. And what we've found in our study is that the number of complaints don't always lead to arrests. There's a negligible amount of complaints actually lead to arrests, and then fewer lead to prosecutions and indictments. This is, we found in cities like Toronto, New York, and also in London. What can be done about it is, first, there needs to be more dedicated enforcement of laws that exist on the books, and then the role of education. Officers and law enforcement need to know what to identify, what constitutes anti-Semitism. And the more that we see a lot of anti-Israel activism that blends in with anti-Semitism or becomes anti-Semitic, it becomes more difficult for police and law enforcement to identify.
So what is behind this? What do you think is behind all this rise up, down of the anti-Semitism? I mean, it's still very high.
Well, just like we saw in the immediate aftermath of October 7th, we saw also in May of 2021, we see it during COVID. Whenever there's a global crisis or there's a crisis in Israel, we usually see an associated spike. However, the intensity that we saw right after October 7th was unmatched in previous decades in history.
What do you think, what could be done to obliterate this, to stop this? Is it on the education level with children? Where is it coming from?
Education needs to be at the forefront, to continue to educate people, to raise awareness of the dangers of anti-Semitism, to raise awareness that hatred against Jews doesn't stop with Jews. It trickles down and expands to other minorities. If Jews are threatened, then other minorities are also threatened, religious or ethnic. And we see that this is a challenge to the very fabric of democracies. Where this occurs, the level of democracy or the strength of democracy is weakened, because if one group can't practice their faith and live freely, then another cannot either.
When we come back, a new generation learning about the Holocaust through virtual reality. In our last segment, Dr. Carl Yonker mentioned the importance of education in fighting anti-Semitism. The three women in our next story found a way to bolster Holocaust awareness using virtual reality. Take a look.
Steven Spielberg didn't get permission when he did Schindler's List. Why do you think you're going to get permission? Who are you? And when people said, who are you? I remember looking at Hani, my friend, and I told her, we're God's daughters. And we started to pray. We had a miracle. We got permission to film in Auschwitz-Birkenau during COVID for 3 days.
3 ultra-Orthodox women filmmakers pursued this production because of a passion for their community. Orthodox Jews often choose to be set apart from mainstream society and don't allow their children to travel abroad alone, so they rarely experience the reality of actually being in Auschwitz.
Most of the students in Israel go to Poland at the age of 17 or 18, but in the ultra-Orthodox community, it doesn't happen. We don't go. I lived in a village with a lot of people. When they came back with this super, super powerful experience they had, suddenly I felt that I've missed something. I have 6 children. As a mother, I can understand that people don't want to send teenagers outside the country without them.
Cohen shares how the technology intensified the sense of being alone, as well as feeling surrounded by the sights and sounds of Auschwitz.
Virtual reality, it's an amazing tool. The first time I put the headset on, felt like I was there.
Auschwitz, being closed by COVID, gave them permission to film with drones.
So we could have a drone shooter from the morning until night. And you'll see the film, there's this part when the drone goes inside Auschwitz, it goes up and you see the massive camp. We worked so hard on the sound of the film and the music. You can hear the people that are in the train that are coughing and crying and sound of babies crying, and that's not something you can see when you're on the ground. What happened is when we came back, everyone wanted to watch it. Orthodox, not Orthodox at all, Christians and Muslims, everyone.
While Cohen and her team made this film for their community, they hope it goes much wider. A first step toward that goal came in January when they released it in London.
This is one of the greatest ideas about the next generation of educating for the Holocaust.
More than 70,000 Israelis have experienced this VR phenomenon, and Cohen plans to release it in New York later this year. What a great way to reach young people. That's all for this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Thanks for joining us. And please, keep praying for the release of the hostages, for wisdom for world leaders, and for healing for the nation. And remember, the God who watches over Israel, and you and me, neither slumbers nor sleeps. I'm Julie Stahl. For all of us here at the Jerusalem Bureau, we'll see you next time on Jerusalem Dateline.